Elenian stood on the threshold of the vast library of Rivendell, the weight of ancient knowledge pressing on his shoulders. The world outside was bathed in the soft, amber glow of the setting sun, but within these hallowed walls, time seemed to stretch endlessly. The echoes of ages past whispered from the very stones, the air thick with the scent of aged parchment and ink. It was here, in these sacred archives, that he had spent much of his life, a life devoted to unraveling the threads of Middle-earth's history. But today, his work would take a new turn. A scroll, long hidden among the forgotten recesses of the library, had recently come to light. Its discovery had sent ripples through Rivendell's learned circles. Elrond had summoned him personally, for the scroll contained something far more precious than mere knowledge. It spoke of Armenelos, the lost city of Numenor, and with it, the whispers of a curse that had never truly faded from the world. Elenian carefully unrolled the fragile parchment on the ancient wooden table. His sharp eyes scanned the delicate elvish script, tracing the faded letters with reverence. The map was unlike any he had ever seen. Its lines were not simply drawn with ink, but seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, as if the parchment itself were alive, waiting for someone to awaken its secrets. This is it, Elenian murmured to himself, the weight of the moment sinking in. The lost kingdom, Armenelos. The map's intricate details depicted a land long gone, a city of unimaginable grandeur that once stood at the heart of Numenor. Yet, as his eyes traced the path leading to the city's location, a chill ran through him. There, in the bottom corner, a strange symbol was drawn. It was not a typical Numenorian design. The edges of the symbol were jagged, like cracks in the stone, and it emanated a sense of foreboding, something ancient and cursed. He felt a pull, not unlike the one he had heard whispered in the stories of his youth, when tales of the great Numenorian kings were still fresh. But those stories never spoke of this. They spoke of glory, of strength, of ships that sailed across the seas, of a people unmatched in skill and knowledge. But here, in this map, there was a warning Elenian could not ignore. As he sat there, lost in thought, a soft footfall behind him made him glance up. Elrond entered the room, his dark robes flowing gracefully as always. His eyes, deep pools of wisdom and sorrow, locked with Elenian's. "I see you have found it," Elrond said, his voice both calm and laden with something darker beneath. Elenian nodded, but his heart raced. This map, it speaks of Armenelos, and this symbol, what does it mean? Elrond stepped forward, his gaze falling upon the map. His expression was unreadable, but Elenian could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. He had seen it before, during the darkest days of Middle-earth's past. When Elrond spoke again, his voice was lower, his words more measured. "Some knowledge should remain buried, Elenian. What you hold in your hands is a key to a past best left Armenelos was not just a city of beauty and wealth. It was a place where the darkness of Numenor's kings began to take root. The curse you speak of is not a simple tale of downfall. It is a tale of a power so great that it has lingered even in the hearts of the living. Elenian looked up sharply, his curiosity piqued. A curse, a power lingering. Yes, Elrond replied gravely. The kings of Numenor sought immortality, and they found it, but not in the way they hoped. The power they sought came from dark sources, forces tied to Morgoth himself. And when Numenor fell, it was not only the might of the kings that was lost, but the very heart of their corruption. The city of Armenelos holds the key to all of this, their pride, their hubris, and their eventual undoing. Elenian leaned in, his hand hovering over the map, the dark symbol calling to him like an ancient melody. But what is this symbol? Why is it different from the others? Elrond's face tightened, and for the first time, Elenian saw a flicker of something he had never seen in the Lord of Rivendell's eyes: fear. Fear of the past. Fear of the truth. It is a symbol of the ancient curse, Elrond whispered. A curse that was woven into the very foundation of Numenor's power. The Palantiri, those seeing stones, were once tools of great wisdom, but the one you hold, the one you seek to find, has a darker purpose. It is tied to the fall of the kings, the rise of Sauron, and the very end of Numenor itself. Elenian's heart pounded in his chest as the weight of Elrond's words sank in. The map, this ancient relic, was more than just a guide to a lost city. It was a key to the greatest tragedy in the history of Middle-earth. Why was it hidden? Elenian asked, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and dread. Elrond paused, his gaze turning toward the distant hills outside the window, where the light of the setting sun bathed the valley in a golden glow. His voice, when he spoke again, was quiet, almost to himself, because some truths are dangerous, Elenian, and some truths should never be uncovered. Armenelos is not meant to be found. Its destruction is bound to the fate of the Palantir, and the stones hold power that could sway the hearts of kings. What you seek may not only reveal the truth of Numenor's fall, but it may awaken something much worse. Elenian sat in silence, the weight of his quest now heavier than ever. He had always sought knowledge, always yearned for understanding. But now, as the truth of the Palantir and Armenelos unfolded before him, he felt the cold grip of fear settle in his heart. What had once been a simple scholarly pursuit now seemed a dangerous game, a game with stakes far higher than he had ever imagined. I must go, Elenian finally whispered, determination hardening in his voice. I must know what happened. I cannot turn away from this. Elrond's gaze softened, but there was no denying the sorrow in his eyes. I cannot stop you, Elenian, but be warned. What you uncover may change everything. And with that, Elenian turned back to the map, the path ahead growing clearer. even as the shadows of the past began to stir. The forgotten city of Armenelos awaited him, and with it, the dark power that had once brought Numenor to its knees. The journey had only just begun. Elenion stood at the edge of the ruins of Armenelos, his boots crunching on the brittle earth as he surveyed the crumbling remnants of the once great city. The sky above was shrouded in a veil of gray, and the wind whispered through the skeletal remains of the stone structures, carrying with it an eerie feeling of desolation. The ruins lay in a valley that had long since succumbed to the ravages of time, their beauty now reduced to nothing but jagged edges and broken foundations. As an elven historian, Elenion had spent most of his life studying the ancient kingdoms of Middle-earth. Yet none had fascinated him more than Numenor. Its rise, its glory, and its eventual fall had been the subject of countless writings, and it had always been a story that had both enthralled and warned. Yet nothing had prepared him for the weight of what he was about to uncover. Armenelos, the heart of Numenor, lay before him, and with it, the dark secrets that the island kingdom had carried to its grave. He moved slowly, his eyes scanning the ruins for any sign of the relics that were said to remain hidden beneath the earth. His hand brushed against the weathered stone of a column, its surface etched with symbols he had seen in the ancient texts. These markings were unlike the ornate scripts of Numenor's nobility, more primitive in their execution, as though something far older had made its mark here. The symbols twisted in ways that seemed unnatural, dark, and jagged, and Elenion could feel the pull of their malevolence even as he traced them. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint sound, almost like a voice. Elenion froze, his heart quickening as he listened. There was nothing but the wind, but he could have sworn he had heard a whisper. His eyes narrowed as he turned his gaze to the vast expanse of the ruined city, his instincts telling him that something ancient and dangerous lay, hidden beneath the dust of centuries. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft footstep behind him. He turned swiftly, his hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at his side. Kalas, the enigmatic sage from the east, had appeared silently, as he often did. His presence was a constant at Elenion's side, though the historian never quite grew accustomed to the quiet manner in which Kalas moved through the world. "Do you feel it, Elenion?" Kalas asked, his voice low and measured, carrying a weight of understanding that Elenion could not yet grasp. Elenion nodded slowly, his gaze drifting back to the ruins. "The curse. It's here. I can feel it." He hesitated before adding, "What happened here, Kalas? What drove the Númenórean kings to seek immortality at any cost?" Kalas stepped forward, his eyes sweeping over the ruins with a look of both reverence and regret. It was a thirst for power, yes, but more than that, it was the arrogance of immortality. They thought themselves beyond the reach of death, beyond the shadow of Morgoth and Sauron. They were wrong. A shiver ran down Elenian's spine as Kala's words echoed in his mind. The kings of Numenor had sought immortality through the use of dark and forbidden powers. In the pursuit of this goal, they had turned to forces they could neither control nor understand, forces that had been bound by Morgoth in ages past. As Elenian moved deeper into the ruins, his eyes fell upon a large stone slab, half buried in the earth. The symbols on the stone were familiar to him. He had seen them before in the texts that spoke of Numenor's fall. These were the markings of a forbidden ritual, one that had been enacted by the kings in their final days. It was said that they had summoned the power of Morgoth himself, attempting to bind his dark magic to their wills. The result was catastrophic. Morgoth's influence had corrupted the kings, driving them to madness and eventual destruction. He knelt beside the stone slab, brushing away the dirt to reveal the full extent of the inscription. The markings were ancient, far older than Numenor itself, and they spoke of a pact with a dark power, one that sought to claim dominion over the world. The language was twisted, foreign even to Elenian's knowledge of ancient tongues, but the meaning was clear. The kings had summoned something far darker than they could have known, and now, whatever it was, it remained here, buried beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to rise again. The first serpent, Elenian whispered to himself, his breath catching in his throat. The name had appeared in the texts, but until now he had dismissed it as a mere legend, a story told to warn the people of Numenor's fate. But now, standing here amidst the ruins, he understood. The first serpent was no mere myth. It was a real, ancient power that had been unleashed by the kings' hubris. Kalas stepped closer, his gaze following Elenian's. "You have uncovered the truth, Elenian," he said, his voice grave. "But now you must ask yourself, what will you do with it? The curse of Armenelos is not merely a relic of the past. It is still alive, still waiting." Elenian's heart sank as he realized the full weight of his discovery. The kings of Numenor had summoned a force far beyond their control, and in doing so, they had set into motion the destruction of their people. The first serpent had been bound, yes, but its influence had never truly faded. It lingered here, in the ruins, in the very earth beneath his feet. "Do you know where it is?" Elenian asked, his voice tinged with a mix of fear and resolve. He could not leave this place without knowing the full extent of what had been awakened. The answers, he knew, lay somewhere in these ruins. Kala's eyes darkened. "I do not know, but I fear that whatever has been awakened here is not something that can be easily undone. You are right to seek the truth, but the price of that truth may be more than you are willing to pay." Elenian stood, his gaze locked on the stone slab before him. The weight of history pressed down on him, and he knew that the path he had chosen was one that could lead to great discovery or to his undoing. first serpent was not just a legend. It was real, and it was waiting. We must find it, Elenian said, his voice firm. We must stop it before it can rise again. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the wind began to howl, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, reaching out toward them. The land itself seemed to groan with the weight of its past, and Elenian could feel the presence of something dark stirring beneath the earth. The curse of Armenelos was far from over, and the shadows of the past were closing in on them, just as they had once closed in on the kings of Numenor. The darkness was awakening, and Elenian would have to face it, whether he was ready or not. Elenian stood at the edge of the chamber, the air heavy with the weight of centuries. The stone walls, though crumbled by time, still whispered faintly of their past glory. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the relic, a dark, twisted object of ancient origin. The palantir, or what was left of it, gleamed faintly under the dim light filtering through cracks in the stone. It was an object of power, one that had once shaped the fate of kings, and now it lay before him, dormant but far from benign. For so long, Elenian had studied these stones, read about them, theorized about their power. He had long admired the craftsmanship of the Numenorians, their ambition, and their desire to master knowledge. But now, standing before this relic, the truth was clear. The palantiri were not mere tools. They were vessels of Sauron's will, corrupting everything they touched, guiding even the noblest of hearts down the path to madness. His breath caught as the stone seemed to stir before him, a faint shimmer of light traveling across its surface. He reached out, his hand trembling, knowing that once he touched it, there would be no turning back. His mind swirled with the implications of this discovery. The curse of Numenor, the very thing that had led to the island's fall, had not died with the kings. It had only been dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Do you understand, Elenian? A voice suddenly echoed in the chamber. Elenian turned quickly, his hand still hovering just above the stone. Kala's, ever the enigma, stood in the doorway, his shadow long and foreboding in the faint light. Elenian's lips parted, his voice a mere whisper. It's real, the power. It was never fully extinguished. Kalas nodded, his expression unreadable. No, and now it seeks to awaken once more. The weight of his words pressed down on Elenian, and for the first time he felt a sense of dread that surpassed his initial curiosity. This wasn't just an ancient relic to be studied. This was a weapon, an instrument of Sauron's malevolent influence. He had known the power of the palantiri, but he had never known this depth of corruption. I thought, Elenian began, his voice trailing off as the realization sank in. I thought I could uncover the truth, but now I see that the truth is far worse than I imagined. Kalas stepped closer, his eyes glinting with a somber understanding. The truth is often often the most dangerous thing we can seek, Elenian. You've seen the ruin it has caused, and now you must decide what to do with it. The historian's gaze lingered on the Palantir, the light flickering more intensely, as if it recognized his indecision. He could feel the pull of its power, a call to knowledge, to mastery, to understanding things no mortal should ever comprehend. It promised the answers to all questions, the solutions to every puzzle, but at what cost? I cannot allow it to fall into the wrong hands, Elenian murmured, more to himself than to Kala's. But if I destroy it, I risk losing everything I've worked for. The knowledge it holds, the answers it contains. It could change everything. Kala's eyes softened, a flicker of empathy breaking through his normally inscrutable demeanor. Sometimes the answers are not meant to be known. There is power in the past, but there is also danger. You are not the first to be drawn to this relic, and you will not be the last. The kings of Numenor were consumed by it. What makes you think you are any different? Elenian clenched his fists, feeling the weight of Kala's words settle heavily upon him. He had always believed that knowledge, no matter how dangerous, was worth seeking. But now, in this ancient, forsaken place, he understood the peril of such a belief. The very act of searching for knowledge had brought him to the edge of madness, just as it had done for those who had come before him. He could almost hear the whispers now, faint echoes of the voices that had once guided the kings of Numenor, their promises, their temptations. The stone seemed to pulse with energy, its power undeniable, as if it were beckoning him to take that final step and fall into its embrace. Elenian's resolve wavered. The fear of what he might unleash battled with his hunger for the forbidden truths hidden within the Palantir. He turned his gaze back to Kala's, seeking some form of guidance, but found none. Kala's was a shadow, a figure of mystery whose own motivations Elenian could not fully understand. Could he trust him? Could he trust himself? You speak of knowledge, Kala said, his voice quieter now. But some knowledge is a curse. Some truths are not meant to be uncovered, not by any man, elf, or wizard. And the power of this stone, it is not knowledge, it is a weapon. The weight of those words sank into Elenian's chest, a slow, suffocating realization. This was not merely a relic, a forgotten piece of Numenor's past. It was a tool of domination, an instrument forged by Morgoth's own hand, and Sauron had merely continued its twisted legacy. The kings of Numenor had sought immortality, but they had found only destruction. What was the use of knowledge if it came at the cost of everything? Elenian's heart beat in his chest like a war drum, the final decision racing toward him. The Palantir beckoned, its siren call promising ultimate power, but at what price? He was not immune to the lure of such power, but he also knew the dangers it posed. I must destroy it, Elenian whispered, more to himself than to Kala's. I have no choice. It is too dangerous. The shadow of Kala's moved behind him, and for a moment Elenian thought he might hear words of warning or encouragement, but there was only silence. He reached out slowly, his fingers grazing the surface of the palantir. The stone pulsed under his touch, and a wave of power surged through him. Visions flickered at the edges of his mind, images of Numenor's kings, their faces twisted with greed and fear, their eyes reflecting the dark promise of the stone. The stone's power surged, pulling at his will, trying to draw him in. In that moment, Elenian realized the cost of his journey, the cost of his search for forbidden knowledge. This was not a relic to be cherished or admired. It was a tool of destruction, and it had claimed the souls of those who sought it before him. And now it sought to claim him. With a final, resolute breath, Elenian pulled his hand away, severing the connection. The vision ceased, and the stone grew cold. He stepped back, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. "I will destroy it," Elenian said, his voice firmer now. "And I will ensure that no one ever falls to the curse of this stone again." Kalas did not respond, but Elenian felt his presence, felt the ancient wisdom of his words, and for the first time he understood the true weight of knowledge. Some things were better left buried, and some truths were too dangerous to unearth. Elenian turned toward the ruins, his heart heavy, but his resolve solidified. The shadow of the past still loomed over Middle-earth, but today, at least, one relic of its darkness would be laid to rest.